Our next speaker is Keith McNeil. He's the Chief Clinical Information Officer at NHS England, and he's going to be talking about the imperative for change. Keith.
So, what are we going to talk about leadership here? Well, look, make no mistake, for everything that you're trying to do, everything I'm trying to do, that this is mission critical. If we don't get this right, nothing's going to happen. We're not going to see the changes that we need to make on behalf of the patients, the public and consumers that deserve what we need to deliver to them. Now let me set the scene. So why am I setting a scene for leadership? You probably think, oh, we know all this sort of stuff. But remember that leadership is very context driven. So you need a different kind of skill set for leading a war, a battle as a general than you do for, say, negotiating a Brexit ending if you're a Prime Minister. So setting the scene about what the challenges are for the 21st century is really important. Now, you will see this sort of graph all over the world. When the NHS started in 1948, the average life expectancy of a male was 63 years. 63 years, and it's now over 83 years. So we've made fantastic strides in terms of life expectancy, but that does come at a cost and at a challenge for us as healthcare system providers, because if you died in 1948, you died of a single illness, whereas now, when you die at the age of 83, usually you've got some sort of complex comorbid ageing-related problems. And the challenges of providing care to those people are significant in terms of both economic, but also in terms of the workforce challenges that face us. And when you add this little gem in, which is the lifestyle-related diseases that are being inflicted now on the 63-year-olds, you start to have a very complex picture. So the demography of the patients that the healthcare system is challenged with today is very different from those 70 years ago when the NHS started. And it's in this context that leadership now has to move the NHS and health systems worldwide at pace and at scale to adapt to these challenges. Now, within that context, what we've got to do, what we're all aiming to do, is achieve the triple aim, which I summarise here as we need better clinical outcomes. We need to strive for better and better clinical outcomes. We need to cure cancer, not just control it and turn it into a chronic disease. We need patients to have a good experience, that empowerment and engagement that will really give them that experience that we all want as healthcare users. We want to deliver that to our patients. And we have to do that within the system affordability because, the cost of healthcare is rising all around the world. And we are struggling against established business paradigms. So this is the good, fast, cheap analogy. You can have good care fast, but it won't be cheap. You can have good care cheap, but it won't be fast. And you can have fast care good, but it won't. Fast care cheap, but it won't be good. Now, the triple aim is challenging us to say we need good care, we need fast care, and we need cheap care. That's a big change in paradigm shift, and leadership is what's got to take us there. This is the real challenge. How do we make a resource, which is capped at the moment at however many 120 billion pounds, versus the demand of every single individual? And as I said, as time goes by, the needs of every individual, when they interface with the healthcare system, are growing and growing and growing because of the complexity of ageing, because of the complexity of chronic comorbid lifestyle-related diseases. And we're struggling, frankly, to manage those two issues. We're struggling to fit it in. So you read about this in the paper all the time. And we work in this world of competing logics. So we have politicians promising the earth to everyone. We have expectations of our corporate masters around targets and access and outcomes. We have expectations of clinicians to be able to do whatever they really like to patients or need to do to patients at the bedside. And I used to be one of them, so I can speak from experience. When you're confronted with a patient who needs lots and lots of care, you do it regardless of the cost. And of course, we only ever pay at the average. We have expectations of patients and consumers about the quality of care, the quality of the experience and the outcomes that they'll receive. So not unexpected. And within all of that sort of sometimes competing logic, we've got to deliver the triple aim. But it's actually, in fact, not like that. It's not linear, it's chaos, because all of these things are interdependent. And when I talk about chaos, I do mean that in a mathematical sense, not in a sort of kindergarten sense of kids running around madly, but I do mean that in a mathematical sense, because that's very important when we think about system dynamics and the sort of leadership that's fit for purpose in a chaotic, mathematically chaotic system. Because information is critical to this, and we're all in the information business. Well, regardless of what we're doing with technology, we are about generating information that can be fed back to inform decision making, to make better and better decisions, be they clinical decisions, be they corporate decisions, be they financial decisions. That's what we're all in the business of with technology, generating good information. Because that information and data reduces the level of uncertainty. You can start to make sense of chaos. And the more information you have, the less random it appears. So what we need to do is disrupt our system to recognise that healthcare is complex and chaotic. It's not out of the Industrial Revolution anymore. And we need leadership paradigms that understand that and set the system up and enable the system to respond to that complexity and that chaos. What does our system look like now? Well, it is straight out of the 19th century, it's straight out of the Industrial Revolution, and it's based on command and control. That's what it looks like, right? And I'm sure any of you who've worked in healthcare for long enough will have experienced this paradigm. And you know what, if you work in healthcare today, you still experience this paradigm. Command and control, it is not fit for purpose in a modern digital age. We're nearly quarter of the way through the 21st century and we're still running Industrial Revolution paradigms around our leadership models. This is the current NHS thing. It's about grip, or more grip when more grip didn't work, but then we need more grip, and it's about levers. Have you ever heard that? Ever heard, oh, you need more grip? The problem is that people don't have enough grip. That's what the problem with the system is. And the problem is that we don't have enough levers to pull to get things to work. So levers and complexity are very interesting. So a lever has a single fulcrum. If you think about it, and you pull the lever and one thing happens. In a complex system, you have to understand that inherently, built into that system, is the law of unintended consequences or unanticipated consequences. So when you pull that lever, you get one outcome from it, but you set off this cascade of events which you then have to go and control. And each one of those blue dots represents a point where if you are in a command and control system, you've got to pull another lever to do it, and hence you set off more and more cascades. What we really need from leadership is to enable people on the ground to respond at the point where these things happen, to give them the bandwidth to be able to do that, to give them the air cover to do that, and build in what is called organisational resilience, and that's about self-organisation. So this is the NHS as we currently know it. This is the famous King's Fund slide, and it's when you look at it, you think it's a complete mess. Well, guess what? That's where clinical services are delivered. Out of all of that, that's where healthcare is actually delivered. The rest of it is a transactional nonsense that just distracts everybody from what they should be doing, which is concentrating on that interaction between a clinician and a patient delivering and receiving healthcare. And leadership has allowed, or lack of leadership, has allowed that to evolve. So what leadership in the digital age is now going to challenge us to do is allow ecosystems to become much more self-governing and self-organising. We've got to think about the way traditional infrastructure will shrink as we get more platform-based things coming in, and you only have to look at the sort of things that are just invading our lives at the moment: Google, Airbnb, Amazon, etc., all platform-based. And that's challenging our leadership paradigms, because we're going to have much, much less reliance on central contracting and central enforcement. The grip and the levers analogy is no longer fit for purpose. These are the best. Visa set this up some 30 years ago. It's now the most successful financial organisation on the planet. It turns over $3 trillion a year, grew 20% year on year, even during the global economic crisis. Doesn't have a traditional headquarters, doesn't have a traditional board, doesn't have a traditional CEO type structure. It is set up as a self-organising, self-governing organisation, and it's been very successful. Let's learn from the best. All of these things have in common, though, is what they do with data and knowledge. They collect it and they aggregate it, they mine it for information, and they use that feedback so they can give a progressively and iteratively better service to their clients, which is exactly what we are doing and what we should be doing in healthcare. This is straight out of the page of the Harvard Business Journal. It's saying really the old power, the command and control, old central managerial representative governance is no longer fit for purpose, that we're moving to this new participatory distributed power base where people are empowered to make decisions, where you look for the skills within your organisation and you allow them to get on and do what they do best. I've always said that the way that you make a success of an organisation is you hire the best people, you give them what they need to do, and you get out of their way and let them deliver it, and then, most importantly, you take credit for all their outcomes. So leadership in the digital age, this is really critical, because what you're all doing is you're innovating, and we've just heard from speakers here about the innovations that are going on. If we don't have effective leadership, we will discourage, we will damp down innovation. And health needs innovation so badly right now in terms of how we are going to make that triple aim work for us. And innovation is about engaging and empowering people who actually deliver healthcare down the bottom right-hand corner of that health diagram. And this is my favourite Einstein quote. This is about innovation. He who joyfully marches in rank and file has already earned my contempt. He's been given a large brain by mistake, since for him the spinal cord would suffice. That is about, let's try something different, for crying out loud. It doesn't matter if we get it wrong, but let's try something different. That's what innovation is all about. And leadership enables people to do that by giving them the air cover to make mistakes occasionally, knowing that we'll never get it all right all the time. We don't do it now, for crying out loud. We've got a system that's perfectly designed to deliver exactly what it's delivering. And we know we can do better and need to do better. This is about creating the right environment. This is people in leadership positions encouraging the growth of people who can produce results for them, not trying to do it all themselves, not trying to determine everything and send out edicts from the top office. This is going to be a really important paradigm shift for us in healthcare systems worldwide if we want this whole agenda to work. That's an if we want it to work, and I'm sure we all do. So as Beverly said, you know, this is about reimagining healthcare. I mean, really reimagining it, looking at it with a different lens. And we've got to push ourselves outside the boundaries of our normal thinking. You know, when Henry Ford said, what would people say when they wanted better transport, they quoted him, they wanted faster horses. You know, he had reimagined transport into the car. That's kind of what we're doing. 10 years ago, who could have imagined what an iPhone would look like? But it's up to us, the people who are in this space, the technology, the innovators, to really reimagine what this can look like. And we've seen great examples of it from Liz today about how we can do that. This is the sort of thing we're building through the National Information Board 2020 program. When you boil it all down again, it's about the flow of data and knowledge, and it's about building a learning and knowledge-based system where we collect the information generated by the clinician-patient interaction, we aggregate it, analyse it, and then use it multiple times. And we use it for things like direct patient care, to feedback to inform that decision-making process. We use it for research, that's the life sciences agenda. We use it for public health, population health, business intelligence. And so what we do is we feed back to every point of decision-making in the NHS high-quality information and data to make those decisions much more effective. There are 1 million patient-clinicians interactions every 36 hours across the NHS, and they all involve multiple decisions. If we can have good information each and every one of those decision points, we'll start to make the NHS much more sustainable. We'll start to produce better patient outcomes and a much better patient experience. We can't do it with this. This is, you know, this is industrial revolution. This is a quarter of our hospitals still are based on paper records. We can't do it like that. We have to move into something that's much more fit for purpose and, as Beverly says, confine the fax machine to Antiques Roadshow. This is the world that we are living in. We're not even moving towards it. We are living in it. Everything up there people see every day. Our kids experience it. I grew up without the internet. I'm one of those older people as defined by the EU now. I grew up without the internet and had to learn about it, but most of what we're dealing with now, most people now who are coming into our healthcare sector to provide it, have known nothing but the internet. 35 years ago, Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet. 25 years ago was the first public internet message. 10 years ago, the iPhone. So we are right in the midst of all this, and we have to embrace this. We can't push this to one side and say it doesn't exist. It is coming to a hospital, a GP surgery, a community health centre, a social care network near you. And we've got to embrace it and enable this and allow this to happen. But this isn't just about technology. Fundamentally, healthcare is about people. It's about the provision of care to people and provision of care by people. 8 times a year, on average, someone with a known penicillin allergy is given penicillin and they develop that reaction and they die. That is a failure in the 21st century of leadership. That is a failure of all the people, myself included, who have allowed that to happen and continue to allow it to happen because we have not had the courage to stand up and make the right decisions and give the person who either dispensed that penicillin or prescribed it the right information at that point of decision making when they needed it. That is a failure of leadership. So regardless of what I do as Chief Clinical Information Officer across the whole of the system, to do all this fancy stuff with computers and technology and whatnot, if this happens, I've failed. We have to get this right. And we will only get this right if we go away from this command and control, top-down, suffocating culture that we have at the moment in healthcare and allow people like you on the ground who know your business so well, to grow up, to encourage, to be empowered and to innovate so that we can stop this from happening. Thank you.